For almost 10 years now, Adam Krueger has been the sports director of KMTV Channel 3 in Omaha, one of the legacy stations in what is, frankly, a pretty darn good television market that maybe is one of the best kept secrets in America. That's a guy who grew up in Nebraska but hasn't lived here most of his life. And Adam, thanks so much for the time. I want to talk a little bit about what you guys do and the Huskers, because that's what everybody wants to talk about. And it's a first-time appearance on this little adventure. So, Adam, welcome and thanks.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. 10 years is a long time in the business, August of 2016. So it's almost 10 years. In your 10th year of doing sports at Channel 3, give me a little bit of an idea of what your kind of groove is and how you've approached the job. Let's just start there with the softball. How about that?
Sure. Well, it's obviously changed, especially in the last few years. Basically, I'm very adamant that as much as social media is controlling the world nowadays, I was hired to do a job on TV, and you still have to take care of the people who watch you every night from 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock. So first and foremost, my sportscast is my main priority, to give the viewers a very informational but yet somewhat entertaining look at the world of local sports. And I've been very adamant about that in my 10 years here. You mentioned the Omaha market. Like I love the Omaha market. Everybody's like, why do you want to stay in Omaha? I'm like, because it's honestly my dream job. It's the perfect blend of college sports and high school sports. I feel like I get the best of both worlds without all the corporatism of pro markets. So I've loved every minute of it. And it hasn't felt like a job at all, but definitely my main priority is the sportscast from 6:20 and 10:20 every night. But also you can't stop learning. You know, the moment you stop learning and think you have it all figured out is the moment everybody passes you by. So definitely still trying to learn new things. I mean, everybody, it seems like Instagram is the biggest thing now. So after Nebraska's win over Michigan State on Friday, I'm staying till like 11 o'clock trying to figure out how to put reels on Instagram, because that's apparently the big thing now. And apparently social media is taken off as far as, making stations money and all that. So I'm trying to learn all that. And while still trying to realize, my main priority is, taking care of the sportscast every night.
At a time when some places across town have like 3 people and you have like 1.5, including yourself. So how much of that workload, how much of that responsibility of making that happen falls on your shoulders?
Yeah, I mean, quite a bit. I mean, I've always taken pride in being, I don't want to say the little engine that could, but basically, doing more with less. Like we don't have the luxury at our station of having multiple photographers. I'm not knocking any other station that has that, but it's one of those, you take extra pride in the fact that, yeah, on a Friday night in the fall, I'm going out and shooting at least 3 football games and coming back and putting it all together for a Friday night football segment. So I definitely take pride in that. I definitely take pride in the fact that, I'm not above going out and shooting a sports feature and coming back and putting it together for the 10 o'clock. I mean, it keeps you young. I think, it doesn't feel like a job. It just, keeps your heart beating. And I take pride in getting out in the community and telling stories that, not necessarily are getting told, because everybody wants to talk about the Huskers. Everybody wants to talk about Creighton, but what about that Class C athlete, in Nebraska who's overcome multiple injuries or, overcome multiple, tragedies in their life and overcomes that and gets to succeed on a high level. That's the stories I really thrive in telling, I feel like, and the ones that I absolutely love telling, because, if you get a shot of rink mast and interview rink mast after a game-winning shot, he's used to it. He's used to these interviews. But when you feature a kid who otherwise wouldn't get any attention and make him feel like he's on SportsCenter, like that is the most rewarding part of the job by far.
And that's the kind of story that resonates with the audience, not just mom and dad and the people in that small town, but that's the kind of thing people remember about the show, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it gives you somebody you want to root for, like, and you never know, like, you could run into the kid next day in the grocery store and be like, oh yeah, I just saw him on the news. Like, I had no idea that kid was going through that. And now that he is, dang it, I want to really root for him. I really want to root for that team. And even if you don't know them, even if that's not in your community, I mean, if it's something, a story of perseverance, fighting through stuff, like that just motivates anybody, whether you're a sports fan or not. And that's what they always tell us, hook the non-sports fan, because Husker fans are obviously going to tune in. But give me the soccer mom who's cooking dinner and doesn't give two craps about, whether or not, Matt Rule went for it on a 4th and 2. They want to hear about somebody who's overcome something that they can relate to in their life.
Yeah, in Nebraska, maybe that mom has an opinion about that 4th and 2 call by Matt Rule. But
Sure.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Channel 7 has dominated television ratings in Omaha for an inexplicable amount of time. How do you, and I'm not going to ask you to speak for Channel 6, but how do you guys compete with that?
I think it just goes back to quality storytelling, like I respect the hell out of Andy and Lauren and Matt over there at Channel 7, because they put in the work, and they don't just sit on their laurels. They go out and bust it just as much as Kelsey and I do, and the Channel 6 and everybody in this market. But I just feel like, I call them the 7 Nation Army, because they do have the bodies to do that. Yeah. So where I feel like Kelsey and I have to go out and tell quality feature stories and get those viewers, because Channel 7 especially puts their resources into Huskers, and kudos to them. That's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. But where Kelsey and I have to go to those high schools, to those smaller colleges, and really lock in on telling quality feature stories that have human interest beyond, just the final stats and all that. So I feel like we have to go about it another way. I feel like, because, luckily I've been lucky enough that we've had anchor continuity in my position, but KTV and Channel 6, they've been all about anchor continuity. Now that, some of their people, on the news side have stepped down recently, like kind of feel like, all right, this is a chance. Maybe someone was like, all right, well, these guys retired, so maybe I'll give another station a chance. So I don't know. I kind of feel like this is a prime chance.
So you feel like you have to sort of keep that fresh and refresh, and maybe you got some new eyes on you who don't know you as much or as well, and you've got to give them something fresh and exciting and all that energy and hard work and resources that you always do. But you hope that they sort of gravitate to you.
Yeah, and above all, just get out and show your face in the community. How are they supposed to watch you if they feel no connection towards you? So go out and show your face at a game, even if it's a very inconsequential game on a Tuesday night, in November. Like, get your face out there and meet, press the flesh and meet the people in the community who actually, you care about, and that, you want to build a relationship with.
Yeah. We know the challenges of young people consuming media. We know that. You talked about Instagram and TikTok, and this is where information is being had. Not just young people, but increasingly older people are getting that. So you talked about doing Instagram Reels. How else is local news competing for the younger audience, getting somebody to get into a habit of watching television when maybe they haven't really watched television in their young lives?
Yeah, well, it seems like you have to go where they're at, like if it's not Instagram, if it's TikTok, if it's not TikTok, it's X. And, I just feel like you have to meet them where they're at, and then maybe they will come in, and you never know, they might come in. If they like a 30-second reel you post up, you never know, maybe they'll come find you, or, we talk about like OTT, maybe they'll come find your app or something like that. So I just feel like you have to meet them where they're at. And if it involves TikTok or doing something a little outside your comfort zone, you just might have to do it. Show them your personality as well, so it's definitely a lot of that, and a lot of posting web stories and all that. So, but yeah, it's definitely different than even when I started at Channel 3 10 years ago.
Yeah. When I did local television sports, and it's been a long time, we got anywhere from 2.5 to 4 minutes in our newscast. Sometimes we get a little bit more on Friday nights. But how much time do you get?
Typically 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Like, obviously, if it's a Friday night in the fall, you get multiple segments, and that's closer to 7 minutes or so with all the high school football you get and whatnot. And on Husker game day, obviously, probably significant more time, probably closer to the 5-minute mark, but typically 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And you do your best to fill that with local and stories that people in your community actually care about, and try to steer clear of national stuff. Because if they want that, they're going to ESPN anyway.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the Huskers in just a minute here, but you also have a national, historically a national basketball power in Creighton in Omaha. Omaha actually made the men's basketball tournament last year, I believe. The University of Nebraska at Omaha, branded as Omaha. How much can you spend doing other stuff when you know so many people are interested in that Big Red N?
Right. You just got to make it appealing. Like I said, make it appealing to the non-traditional viewer. How did Omaha men's basketball get such a big following and such interest last year? Well, an assistant coach decides to beat the crap out of a trash can, and all of a sudden it takes off like wildfire and is featured nationally. So, I mean, did it get overplayed a little bit? I don't know. I mean, people really jumped on that bandwagon last year. So if it works, right? So I guess just it goes back to finding the unique story that no one's telling, or the unique story that it just hooks the non-traditional viewer, and just kind of run with it. And I'll be honest, like Creighton and Omaha, like God bless them. They could those people who work there, they could easily be bitter about all the coverage we give to Huskers, but they're not. They're just the nicest people, coaches, players, SIDs, and they just are so thankful and so helpful. Not that Nebraska is not, but Creighton and Omaha are just so helpful in wanting their stories told, that it makes you want to go the extra mile and highlight them when they do well on the courts.
I hope you don't mind me asking this, sort of personal, but one of the things that makes it work if you have a family is figuring out how to make it work when you work until 11 o'clock every night, and you work Sundays and Saturdays and holidays and all of those things. How do you manage that with your family, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, it's definitely a balance. That's the kind of thing I've had to learn over the last 20 plus years I've been in this business. It's knowing when to step on the throttle at work, and definitely knowing when to pull back, because you're a lot, you only get a family pretty much once. And so, when you're all done, I've heard this a lot in the last few years, like when you're at the end of your line in this life, like who goes back and says, oh, I wish I would have spent more time at work? Nobody. So you just got to understand what the priorities are when it comes to when you need to be there for your family, and then when you need to be there for, your profession. Like I've pretty much changed my tune on this. I feel like in the last decade or so, when I've been, cause I used to be that grinded out, I will spend every night at work until midnight or 1 o'clock, if that's what it takes. But it's also one of those, I mean, I've gotten to the point where, yes, I will bust my ass for this place, but I'm not going to kill myself over this place, because there are bigger things in life.
Yeah. You also learn how to be more productive with your time. You can turn out more product in less time, because you're just much better at it and faster, and you think quicker, and you can interpret and do all of those things quicker, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's probably one of my strengths in this profession, is just realizing, okay, when's the time to really focus on something and spend hours on something, and when's the time to be like, cut your losses and be like, nope, time to move on. I'd rather be reaching out for story ideas than logging a Husker game, logging a Husker men's basketball game on the road, just watching the TV. It's like, no, how could you really be using your best hours of the day so you can work ahead, as opposed to work behind and always feel like you're working behind, as opposed to ahead, where you're not as stressed.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk Huskers. Adam Krueger is a sports director at KMTV Channel 3 in Omaha. He's with us on Watch the Media. I'm John Shrader. It's always interesting in that since I was young, and that was a long time ago, Nebraska football has been the brand in Nebraska, and it's never changed through I don't know how many coaches now in this century. And what do you make of the last month or so of the Nebraska football program, and what does it mean? How about that for a little? I don't know if it's a toughie, but go for it.
No, it's just very interesting, because a few months ago, it seems like many in Husker Nation were worried sick honestly, let's say some were worried sick that Matt Rule might move back to his alma mater, because we've seen Husker fans have seen it before when it comes to Dave Van Horn and all that. But man, how much a couple months can change things. I mean, even after the USC game and after Dylan Raiola got hurt, fans were still thinking, okay, we can still salvage this. You know, I even asked Coach Rule, I'm like, hey, a Florida bowl game even after UCLA, like a Florida bowl game is still on the table. How awesome would that be? And that feels like 20 years ago. But yeah, these last 3 games have been a very, very tough watch, especially when it comes to, the defense, because it's just so weird how everybody going into the year was talking about Dylan and Emmett. And honestly, when it came to the defense, there just wasn't much to talk about. I mean, yeah, there's Williams Winery and a couple new faces and all that, but it felt like most of the year when it came to the defense, we were talking about who wasn't there. Like, how many times did Ty and Nash get brought up? They're not there anymore. It almost became like one word: Ty and Nash, Ty and Nash, Ty and Nash, Ty and Nash.
Yeah.
We weren't there anymore. And boy, did it make a difference. I mean, Nebraska's run defense was just so tough to watch, especially those last 3 games of the year. And it's funny because after the Michigan game and all that, Rule was saying, oh, like, we're allowing a few runs here and there, but it's not like they're driving the field down on us and getting 6 and 7 yards a pop. Well, guess what? At the end of the year, it definitely turned into that. And it's just so frustrating to watch, because it turns out, Nebraska, their bugaboo the last couple decades has been turnovers on the offensive side of the ball. Well, guess what? They had the fewest turnovers since, I believe, 1992. That is great. That's crazy to think. That's, the beginning of the Tommy Frazier era. So if you told me Nebraska would only have 11 turnovers, I'm like, oh my gosh, 8, 9, 10 wins might be on the table. But guess what? The defense just did not hold up its end of the bargain. And it was just a very tough watch to watch the last month of the season.
Do you ever find yourself trying to figure out how to balance being critical and tough on the program, knowing that most of your audience has probably got a Nebraska banner in their in their home somewhere, or they have tickets, or they went to school there, or their parents did, or their siblings do, or something? Is there a balance there that you have to find, or can you just come out blazing whenever it's necessary?
Oh yeah, it's definitely the toughest part of my job, especially trying to withhold my actual thoughts when tweeting during a Husker game. I mean, a lot of people, some people I know will call me Sassy Crude Dog on Twitter during a Husker game, because it's tough to hold it. Like, a lot of people accuse the media in this market of being too shy to ask the tough question, or, too buddy, with the coaches. And I mean, I'm a Nebraska alum, but if anything, I think my biggest problem is I'm too hard on them. And maybe that's just because I grew up in the glory days. So yeah, it's absolutely a tough balance. But I mean, for my personal well-being, like in my job security, do I want the Huskers to do well? Yes, obviously. The better they do, that means, the more job security you have, because that means the program is in more demand and more eyeballs will watch. So yes, I obviously, you want them to have somewhat success. But yeah, it's definitely a very tough balance. But I feel like, as long as, I feel like in this type of setting or on Twitter, that's where you can be more opinionated about the program. But as long as I stay true to my nightly sportscast, as far as coming off objective and fact presenting, like that, then as long as you stay neutral in that regard, then I don't really have a problem with it.
Do you find that Rule, or maybe all of the coaches, but let's just say Rule for now, accepts difficult questions, accepts criticism well?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's, for the most part, been very, very honest. Like, I put him on the spot a few weeks ago before Dylan made his announcement, and he's just like, honestly, I just can't talk about it. He goes, honestly, he'll be honest. He'll be like, if he doesn't want to talk about it, or feels like he can't talk about it, he says he won't. But I feel like, yes, for the most part, he's been very honest and very open about, even tough questions. And now, will that remain in place with the tough schedule coming up in 2026? That remains to be seen. But I do feel like maybe a little more towards the end of the year, he got a little more defensive, especially when it came to asking about the direction of the program, and if it was a program reset after all the coaching changes. So I will say, yes, I do feel like he's feeling more heat, obviously, because the honeymoon is long over.
Yeah, long over. Yeah, they put away the 90s, and the honeymoon is over. How about Hoiberg? I've always felt like, Hoiberg's a guy who coached in the NBA, where they do media before every game and after every game. I always felt like Hoiberg was very polished in that respect. How do you find him and his relationship with the media?
I mean, tremendous. I mean, he will tell it like it is. Now, I will say he does repeat the same things a lot, but I think he's also trying to message his team. Don't ride, we've heard from Hoiberg numerous times this year, don't ride the roller coaster, don't ride the roller coaster. We'll see how good we actually are once we hit adversity. We've heard this a time or two by now, but hey, guess what? It works. I hate to say it, boring sometimes works. So, especially when it comes to keeping your team grounded, and he's kept his team grounded. I saw that, with that win over Michigan State on Friday, Fred Hoiberg now has 5 wins over top 10 teams just in his time at Nebraska. Husker football would kill for 1 win over a top 25 team, and it hasn't happened since 2016. But you have Hoiberg out here doing more with less with 5 wins over top 10 teams. And I think that's the thing that Husker fans just really care about, doing more with less. And Fred Hoiberg has been the epitome of that. That it's no secret that Nebraska men's basketball is probably in the bottom half, if not the bottom third of NIL, in the league. So with what Fred Hoiberg has done these last few years, it's honestly been unbelievable. 11-11 against ranked teams since March of 22. Like, that is a Husker men's basketball fans, football fans would really kill for that. But the fact they're doing in men's basketball, a 500 record against ranked opponents in the last 4 years, Husker fans would kill for that. And so just what he's done, I know your question was mostly how he works with the media. I mean, he's absolutely great, definitely honest as it gets. But just what he's done with the program, I mean, has been nothing short of impressive.
Yeah. Maybe they should redirect some of that football money over there and allow him to get out of the bottom third, considering what they've done. Yeah, I mean, we're not beating this too much, but Rule's record against ranked teams is awful. I'm sorry. It's just awful. In his entire career, he's beaten ranked teams twice, and he hasn't done it here. Nobody's done it here, as you mentioned, in 10 seasons. And so that has to change if the football team's going to be in a top 10, and maybe Nebraska will be a top 10 team in men's basketball one of these days. And again, don't want to beat it too hard, but just go down the list of coaches at Nebraska: Bus Boom Kelly, Mark Manning, Rhonda Revelle, St. Clair, the track and field coach, Amy Williams. We're talking about a list of people who've had accomplishments in postseason and championships, and the football coaches have not, right? And Rule has not, And so where would you put him on that list of most accomplished coaches? He wouldn't be in the top 5,
Definitely not. I mean, I know he's maybe not. I don't know. I know at Temple and Baylor, that was one thing. He kind of caught lightning in a bottle there. But I mean, there's still time. Like, people who want to run
now. Yeah, it's different now. It's a different business now.
Yeah, and Rule definitely still has time. But on the flip side of that, it's also the transfer portal era where, I mean, Rule brought him up. Kurt Signetti. He's like, I know everybody wants this to be Indiana, but he's basically saying Indiana is the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
But at the same time, with the transfer portal now, you can flip programs a hell of a lot quicker, and you should.
And I think that's the fair question of Rule at a time when you can flip the program so quickly, and you have 85,000 people in the stadium every week, and you have the kind of money. And he even admitted this, probably the quiet part out loud. I have all the money I need now. We've got the funding we need. There are no excuses for this team not being. I don't think they're a football playoff championship team yet, but they do have the resources and the money and the interest and the commitment from the university to be that team. They've got to be that team, especially paying that coach as much as they are.
Right. When you have a hometown kid in the guy who ended up going to Miami, Shamar Brown, a lot of talk at that time was, well, Nebraska didn't want to pay what he was asking for. So, but Nebraska doesn't have that excuse anymore, especially with Emma Johnson out of the program now. So it'll just be interesting where Nebraska is going to spend its money in the offseason, especially with the new Playfly, and that gave them some extra money to spend. Where are they going to spend their money? Is it going to be mostly on the transfer quarterback? Is it going to be, on the lines where probably Nebraska needs it most? Let's be honest. So and we're going to hear more than the name Pat Stewart more than we have in the last year plus. Like, a lot of people don't know a lot about this guy because we've only talked to him a time or two. So how is he going to acquire talent to get this program back to where fans let's be honest, fans' expectations have dropped significantly, even in the last decade. They're not asking for, multiple Big Ten title game appearances in a 5-year span. They're just like, at this point, yeah, just get to 9 wins. Like one of my coaches back in the day, he basically just said, I have 2 rules: be on time and don't embarrass me. I don't know how the Huskers are punctuality when it comes to practice, but as far as don't embarrass me, the last 3 games, they've embarrassed the program.
Yeah, I've mentioned this recently on this podcast, and I've mentioned it before. At this point, they're not going to be Ohio State. They've got to be Minnesota and Iowa before they get to Ohio State.
And hearing that, even me hearing that, just kind of makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. Like, yeah, fingernails on a chalkboard. But guess what? PJ Fleck, he's consistent. Kirk Ferentz, beyond consistent. Yeah. So that's where Nebraska has to aspire to be in this day and age.
And then if you get to that point, then I think you can jump to the next level, maybe even beyond what Minnesota and Iowa can do, because of 85,000 seats, because of the amount of money they've committed, because of the tradition and those things. But, trying to be everything at one point is impossible. And so they need to keep chipping away. So.
Yeah, and especially with next year's schedule, I mean, it's daunting, so much more daunting compared to this year's schedule. And I'll just be curious to see, the non-con looks very, very manageable. But if the Huskers get in a jam next year with a losing streak, and for some reason they don't make a bowl game, like, what's going to happen then? I know everybody cares about the sellout streak and all that, but 2027, you just wonder.
If they make a bad decision on a quarterback, I mean, this is what it comes down to, right? They've got to make a good decision on a quarterback, whether it's the guy they have, probably not, or go get somebody and how much they pay, and if you can keep him healthy and all those things. That's the key right now. I think that's the most important question.
Exactly. I mean, we all saw what happened with Jeff Sims. I know the coaching rule and the coaching staff were kind of, had to play hurry up and try to find a quarterback for 2023 when Casey Thompson left and all that. But we saw how the Jeff Sims experiment worked, and the fact that Jeff Sims went on to another school and do okay, like that has to drive Husker fans insane. Like when Adrian Martinez went to K-State and Wan'Dale Robinson, like when Husker players leave and go have success elsewhere, Husker fans cannot stand that. Some might say they're happy for them, but the diehards are like, no, like, why did that not happen here?
And I think also the quiet part should be said out loud, and that is in a place like Omaha, where there's lots of Division I college football players. Most of them, almost all of them, are not going to Nebraska.
It's very interesting. I mean, you have Millard South, one of the most dominant high school teams ever in this state, and none of those Division I prospects really picked Nebraska. So it just makes you wonder. I mean, it's a tough balance because, like we trust these coaches to pick the best talent and go after the best talent in the country. And I don't know if it's just not a fit for the system, but none of those players ended up at Nebraska. It's interesting.
Yeah. One final thought from you, and I think you probably have uttered this at some point, but what is it about this job that gets you out the door in the morning, that gets you up and excited about it, even after now being in the business for almost 20 years, I guess?
Honestly, just the camaraderie when it comes to getting out and meeting people in the community. Like, I'm not going to lie. Yes, shooting Husker football games is one of the most fun part of the jobs, but the most rewarding part of the job is I'll go back to getting out to those other communities, the non-Lincoln and Omaha, and just those smaller high schools or smaller colleges, and getting to know them, because they put as much work, if not more, in than the D1 athlete, into just trying to get through life and be respectable in their sports. And they put in so much work, and to feature them, that's the most rewarding. Husker football might be the most fun to shoot. The most rewarding part is telling the stories that we don't get to hear about typically from all other types of media. That's the most rewarding part. That's what gets me going. That's what gets the blood pumping every day, is telling those stories that really don't get featured very much.
I get the feeling that I'm not going to see a headline on social media one of these days that says, Adam Krueger has taken a job in Kansas City. Adam Krueger is moving to Minneapolis to do TV. I'm not going to see that.
No, I don't see this. Nebraska is my forever home, period, end of story. Like the market, I am so blessed to cover sports in Nebraska, especially Omaha, because like I say, it's the best of both worlds. Like you may not get the pro teams or anything like that, but let's face it, the Huskers are the pro team, period, end of story. Yeah. And Creighton and Omaha are great to cover. And I get to to cover high school as well, which is just so rewarding and so awesome to do on a daily basis.
Well, that's cool. And thanks for your time. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to chat with you. We bump into each other a lot, but this is the first time we've had an opportunity to talk about some of these things, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, John, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Adam Krueger is the sports director at KMTV Channel 3 in Omaha, and he's been kind enough to spend some time with us on Watch the Media. I'm John Shrader.